I don't think any single game can fulfill all of my needs as a person who likes making builds. I enjoy customizing my playstyle in these games that give you actually meaningful choices for doing so, but I don't think that any one game is going to be able to easily fulfill all of the things I like about that all at once. A lot of games that give you access to a build that you know you like, well, categorically then, they can't be games that force you to make a new build each time, but I like that too. So I feel like the things that I enjoy about making builds are kind of self-contradictory to some extent. I think the things that can be fun about making builds are self-contradictory. You can't really get them from one game. So I'm going to suggest two types of build making systems. So basically two types of games that have build experiences in their gameplay loop. And I think if you play one of each of these types of games together at the same time, or you kind of have them on hand, you're into them, you've gotten started with them, you're through the tutorial or whatever, however you want to think of it. If you have these two types of games on hand, it makes for a much more fulfilling experience if you like making builds, if you enjoy making your own playstyle, creating something you like. I think having these two types of games will be a lot more fun, a lot more fulfilling. They really solve each other's problems, I think. Or you could think of it as it's not really possible to get all the benefits of build making goodness in one game, or at least I think it would be hard. You'd have to design a game specifically for that, and maybe we will do that in the future. But yeah, for now, two types of games. So the first one, I'm going to refer to these as build making sessions. Here I'm picking some passives before the start of this run, this session, but in this session a whole build will come into existence and disappear. Obviously, some of you who are familiar with this type of game, that might, again, it might seem simple, but I do think that that idea has some really interesting consequences. The ability to just load up the game, and you don't really have a build ready to go. Yes, there are certainly some things you've unlocked, but you know, the upgrades or whatever that the game uses to give you an interesting build, you don't have those. You have to go get them. You're not exactly sure which ones you'll get. That has a lot of, I think, positive effects on your experience of making builds, as long as that's not all you have. Again, I think there's a lot of problems with this too if you like playing and making builds. But it can be really fun if you have something else as well, if you have other types of build making things too. But I want to talk about the benefits first. And of course, the obvious one is I just started a run. It's pretty beautiful to be able to begin a run of a game like this, and you get to go from no build through the early, mid, and end game, whatever those are in the game, of the game's difficulty anyway, with that one build in one sit down. You know, imagine I was playing Cyberpunk 2077 during the opening. Imagine how infrequently in a game like that you would start a new build, at least without mods. You know, that would happen. It would take hours at the very least, probably days, weeks, months for a lot of people to experience a new build, whereas these games let you do it in less than an hour almost always, if not a lot shorter than that. I don't know what this build is going to be. You know, we'll get into lots of other benefits, but being able to just make something so quickly is very liberating if that is the thing that you enjoy. I think a lot of people don't play these types of games to deliberately make things, but I think they can be really good at it. They obviously have some strength at that. You can make things really fast. Quick little lightning round of other positive benefits of this type of build making. Again, a lot of people might not play these games deliberately to make builds, but one thing they can be great at is if you are interested in making builds, but you don't necessarily choose the build you're going to make in these games, that can be very inspiring. It can be cool to start up a run and have an eye toward making a build, but you don't know exactly what the game is going to give you, and so you'll be given new ideas. It's possible that you'll make a new build without even having an idea. You might just happen upon an interesting combination of upgrades that is good, is fun. You might find things you wouldn't have thought would be fun. You wouldn't have chosen to play those things, but it actually is pretty fun to use those upgrades. It can be a great way to understand what other people enjoy too, if this is something that matters to you. I really enjoy when I find myself appreciating the merits of something that other people think is good, but I didn't until I, got into it more. That's definitely something that's nice. The big thing for me is the order of upgrades. You suddenly care about the order in which you get the things on a build. I think that makes these games potentially more consistently fun, especially the earlier part of these games. It's obviously shorter, so that's one thing. If you pick upgrades you dislike, then you're not stuck with them for as long. That's another benefit, by the way. We'll conclude the lightning round there. But on a larger level, you are encouraged to take things that are good early on, not just to build everything up to one powerful conclusion, one powerful complete build, you might think of it as. It's good to make a single powerful complete build, to build the run up to that, but again, you might just die before that's complete. And so the game does encourage you to take things that are good now. And these games are designed to have fun options. So encouraging the player to take something that is good now encourages the player to make something that is fun now. And I personally think that these games are a lot more interesting, a lot more compelling when you have a small number of upgrades. If those upgrades also power up together and build into something greater than the sum of their parts, that's incredible. It can be a great experience. You get a fun early game that other games might lack, but you still get this feeling of building up to this crescendo of power, this interesting interaction between components. I think that's magical. It's hard to do that with other game models. Now let's address, if you'll join me, the elephant in the room. These games are not necessarily that great at letting you play exactly what you want to play. I can definitely relate to a feeling some of you might have that these games are, let me put it this way, it kind of feels to me like these games aren't always trying to be something that I want. Like, I don't want to just see if I get a powerful run. I want to get a good set of upgrades on purpose. I want to make a build, or I have a playstyle in mind that is fun to me, that I know is fun to me. I want, maybe I'll use the term authorship. I want to make a build on purpose. I don't really want it to be random whether I succeed or get what I want. And you might feel that way and then feel like this whole category of game or this type of thing, these build making sessions are maybe not for you. Personally, over the past few years, I've had the experience that a lot of these games are trying to be appealing for us, if you feel the same way I do. I think that a lot of them appear to be very interested in randomness, but the devil is in the details. That's an appropriate one for Hades that I actually left in the script. I think it's important to focus on how the game treats the randomness. In Hades, you get a lot of decision points to control that randomness. It's very difficult to recommend a ton of games like this, but looking at the way the game treats the randomness, or does the game make things very reliable, but it's much more focused on your skill? How much power do you get from making some synergistic thing? How reliable is it to do that? If you have a cool idea for a combination of upgrades, does the game let you get them, but just maybe not right now or in the exact same order? Or does the game make it truly deeply random how you would get them, whether you will get them? In Hades, my experience is that 9 times out of 10, if you use everything the game offers to get upgrades that you want, you will get them. Not every single time, but overwhelmingly often, to the point that you have to adapt to what order you get them in, and maybe what you take along the way, not whether you will get them. You will get a reasonable, not overly greedy build combination that you like. So yeah, I don't think that these games are comfortable, right? Like, the worst thing you can say is that they're not good at letting you just play exactly what you like. If you've got this neat quality of life thing, this cute little addition to a build, these games don't, in my experience, usually do a great job of respecting that thing. If you want to come back from work, I guess, and sit down and play something that is familiar and comfortable, maybe these games don't do so well at that. Maybe that is a weakness these games have. But that's exactly why I would want to recommend an ongoing game as well, something that has a different kind of build-making experience, because I think those two things cover for each other's weaknesses. Oh, right, actually, that was supposed to be that was the transition point between... And so that's why I think it's good to have both kinds of games. Shall we still talk about the other type? What I had been getting at before is that ongoing games where you have a build or a roster of builds ready to go, they change, when you want them to. They don't change if you don't want them to. They're always there. You can build whatever conveniences or comforts into them that you want and kind of sit down and just play something that you like. Like, that's really amazing to have alongside an experience that lets you experiment when you want to. Being able to play those session-based games when you want to make something new, and then having the ongoing games so you can enjoy making builds or tweaking builds a little bit without having to earn the right to play something you like. The challenge in those session-based games may be preventing you from actually playing something you enjoy. You don't have to do that if you have this other type of game. So I really do think they complement each other very well. They cover for each other's weaknesses, in summary, in that the session-based games are very good at allowing you to experiment, and a lot of them actually are interested in you being able to do some controlled experimentation. They're not necessarily obsessed with total randomness. They will give you enough control to make your decisions meaningful and success based on your thinking, your interesting build ideas. They just encourage you to experiment, and they're focused on playing to the strengths of their format. They make you pick things to keep your build alive in the short term. They make the early game of making a build really interesting in a way it might not otherwise be. And these are things that are kind of uniquely strong about that format. It's quite hard to get those strengths out of a game that lets you build things up over time. After all, in an ongoing game, why would it be good to make a build that is fun now at the expense of it being fun later? These games are about your investments, your decisions, staying put, not changing. And so why not save everything up for a build that's powerful later? Why make a build that's powerful now only to earn the ability to play a build that isn't powerful later? That it doesn't really make sense. I'm not saying you can't make a game that is good at both the things that these two types of games are good at. I'm just saying I haven't found one yet, so you should totally try playing these two types. Let's focus a bit more on, again, this category of ongoing game. I'm calling them ongoing build-making experiences. There are, of course, a lot of benefits to these more ongoing build-making experiences. You can build up something that is comfortable for you over a long time. You can really form a relationship with the builds you have. You can find a new challenge and have the great experience in these games of having a tool ready to go that you crafted, possibly not even knowing there would be something exactly like this for that tool to be useful for, to be applied to, but then tackle that new challenge with your build, your setup, and find it to be effective. That can be a great feeling, and having a toolbox available is one of the great joys of making builds that you don't necessarily get in a game that makes you make a new build every time. So having a game like this where you have builds on hand, that's great. I reckon that it's these games that people more traditionally refer to builds. When people refer to their build in a game or share a loadout or whatever in a game, it's usually these kinds of games, and I guess that's because you keep a specific build or loadout. But both these and the session-based experiences from before allow you to build up a repertoire of known useful tools. It's just that this game lets you use them right away. You can acquire them and then just kind of store them, whereas the session-based experiences, you have to go acquire them anytime you want to use them, right? And so it is a very different feeling. It gives you a feeling of maybe mastery or comfort alongside the experience of something new, a sense of discovery in the more session-based experience. I think a really important aspect of the strength of ongoing build experiences is that they allow you to get a feeling of power or mastery, as I said it before, without having to kind of fight for it. If you want to play a fully formed thing, one of the pitfalls of a session-based experience is that you have to earn it. You have to kind of fight for it. You have to fight for the ability to get to the end game. It's fantastic that those games do the early game well. At least I think they frequently do. But it's also a great feeling to not need to go through that again if that's something you dislike. I'm starting to feel like this video might be better at convincing you that you only like one of these two things than that you should try both of them, but at least there's plenty of benefits, right? I also think that these games tend to be much better at letting you incorporate a new element. Something I didn't talk about with the session-based games is this idea that I think you want to look for one that doesn't update that often. So for Hades, for example, the developers actually announced to us that they were not going to release more updates, which I think is really valuable for that type of game, because it gives you the confidence to notice things in the game and know you can come back to them. You don't have to worry that they're going to change out from under you or something. But it's very satisfying to have builds ready to go and get one new piece, and you get to choose to apply that one new thing somewhere in a mostly functional build you already have. I think that's very valuable. I just wanted to leave that at the end because I think it is an underestimated benefit of these games. Yeah, to summarize, is pretty simple. I just think that these two types of games both do some things really well, but sort of categorically can't do some other things. And I reckon that most people that like making builds in either type of game want some of the stuff that that type of game can't really do. I think it's very pleasant to have some variety. You might not want everything to be the same always. You might want to try a whole new build, but those more ongoing experiences can make that very time consuming. It's great to have a session-based game to just go give something new a try. Likewise, it can be very relaxing to have something ready to go, or to be able to consider a new build option with an established framework instead of having to wait till you randomly encounter it. You might have an appetite for a certain amount of adaptation to the circumstances or not. You might be into improvisation or planning when making your builds, and that might not cause you to take the advice of this video. You might just play more of one type of game or the other. But I hope that you at least thought that there were some interesting merits to both types. I hope you will give them a try. It can be pretty straightforward to get into, especially a session-based type of game. It doesn't have to take too long, and then you don't like it, you don't have to go back. Yeah, that's the video. I hope this helped you find something that you would enjoy. I hope it encouraged you to help use games together to complement each other's strengths and not just rely on one thing, to avoid burnout and enjoy everything that you already enjoy as much as you possibly can. Have fun out there.